Welcome to the Art and Science of Complex Sales, proudly presented by Membrain. This podcast is your gateway to mastering the craft of modern selling. If you're passionate about growth, impact, and unlocking full potential in sales and revenue, you're in the right place. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And now let's get started with today's guest. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Today we are talking with two more amazing people in the long line of amazing people that we've had on the show. We get to talk with Brent Long, CEO of Long on Life, and Nick Massaro, a sales effectiveness consultant, a senior sales effectiveness consultant here at Membrain. Brent is author of The Greatest Sales Question Ever Asked, and we are diving into specifically top of funnel prospecting. So how are we executing that today? And what are some of the truths about cold calling and prospecting in 2026? All right, let's get started with Nick and Brent. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Art and Science of Complex Sales. I am on here with two people that I truly adore. You guys are awesome. You're amazing. Brent Long, Nick Massaro, welcome to the show.
Hey, Paul, thanks. I just threw your commission check in the mail for saying that.
Excellent. That's what I expected. Absolutely. I will buy myself a Coke and it'll be delicious.
Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't bounce. Hopefully the check doesn't bounce.
Can we just Venmo, please?
Yeah, sure. Yes.
Well, welcome to the show, Brent and Nick. Welcome back, man. You've been off for a while for a huge blessing in your life.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. Little daddy duty with our son being born in March and my wife starting back at work a couple weeks ago. We had a 2-week gap before we hired some professional help by way of daycare. So I was blessed to be able to fill that gap and spend some time with Leo the past 2 weeks. So, yes,
Leo.
Glad to be here.
I love it.
Good to see you both.
And hey, we are, Brent, I'm not going to pass you this, but we are in the midst of the real football season that's going on right now in terms of the World Cup. So I'm kitted out. I got my kit on. I'm sure you can't tell who I'm rooting for, but this connects us in one way, Brent. I think it connects us we're both coaches. I got to coach the round ball. You coach the oblong one.
Yes.
And I do want to tell everybody out there real quick, one of my favorite, Coach Brent has written one of my favorite sales books I've ever read, which is fantastic. It's called The Greatest Sales Question Ever Asked. And it's awesome. I love it because it combines my faith and my profession, and you did that really well, Brent. So good stuff, man. Good stuff. How has the response to the book been going?
Well, I appreciate you mentioning that and bringing it up. It's going better than I expected because I'm probably the most reluctant author you've ever met. Like I had no plans to write a book, but every once in a while I'll get a notification that 20 books just got bought or 40 books just got bought, and it's still selling. I was invited to do a speaking gig last week in Indianapolis, as a matter of fact, based solely on the book. And because of the book, this group brought me in and worked with 20 people who have chapter offices across the United States. And in 2.5 hours, took them through 30 years of writing that book. So, yeah, it was wonderful. It was great experience.
Hey, can you give everybody on the podcast the question? What is the question?
Yeah, I will give him the.
They got to read the book for everything. But I just want.
I will give him the translated marketplace question form first. Do you want that problem to go away? Right. Mm-hmm. The question itself was, do you wish to be made well? Do you want to be healthy? And, if you think about growing a business, the idea of asking a question of whether or not you want to be healthy is pretty powerful. There's a lot of business owners out there who talk a lot I'm not sure they all want to be healthy.
Brent, man, thanks for the investment in diving in and doing the book and explaining that to us. And everybody, I'd highly recommend going at it. We're going to apply it to one specific area. And before we answer that question, do you want to be healed? Do you want to accept the change that you're going to need? We're going to talk about getting people on the line. So we're going to dive into prospecting. And it's a big part of sales. I mean, and it's something that right now there's a huge climate of change in the air in terms of prospecting. So, Brent, my question for you is, how have you seen the climate in the past 10 years for just prospecting change?
Yeah, great question. So prospecting as a whole seems to continue to change every time there's a new technology introduced. Meaning we think there's technology that's going to take off the pressure of prospecting, and we get further and further away from the basic fundamentals that actually start a relationship often, right? And so prospecting is now content marketing. Prospecting is now, reaching out to somebody on LinkedIn. Prospecting is now doing a whole bunch of stuff. But does prospecting still involve walking up to a complete stranger and starting a conversation? And I see people relying on tools that they may not have mastered yet versus building the skills to build relationships with total strangers.
So that's great feedback. So the core hasn't changed. The ability to build relationships with total strangers, that is the core. It's just the medium.
Yes, correct. Absolutely. And when we introduce new mediums, we think the new medium is going to take the work from building a relationship and make it easier. Not necessarily so.
So let's go to one specific part of that, prospecting and building a relationship with that. And Nick, you have a lot of experience in this. Is cold calling now dead?
Is cold calling dead?
Mm-hmm.
That's a big question. I think from a high level, no. I would say cold calling's not dead, and it's never been more alive. I would say there are components of it that are dead or are dying. Ways to go about it that don't work anymore, and maybe never worked really that well to begin with. But I can dive into that a little more if you'd like. But I would say, yeah. So I think that the SaaS, hire an SDR, have them rip 1 billion dials with the goal to set appointments. I think that's dying, maybe dead. That's really a tough game. We're in such a low trust economy right now. And with the explosion of AI, I think that's making it hard to trust anything anymore. With all the deep fakes and just posts that are AI written, it's hard to really trust what you see online right now. And that has people's trust down on the phones as well, with all the scammers and things, plus all the robocalls that you get. So that being said, I think that hiring a junior salesperson and having them do the hardest part of the sales cycle is dead. Like, that doesn't work, because cold calling is harder than ever, but it's more valuable than ever. And I think it's the fastest path to having a meaningful conversation in market, and certainly a very important way to differentiate yourself from all the noise online. Engaging with a post on LinkedIn, sending an email, that's all good and well. If you have the skills to pick up the phone in addition to that and do that really well, you've just separated yourself from the pack in a big way.
100%.
Well, and Brent, you, the way you put it before in terms of the change in prospecting, it's the difference in medium, right? But and that's how the climate has changed. And Nick, that really relates highly to that, as you know what Brent just said, is but it's still the ability to start a relationship from effectively from not much, right?
Yeah.
And Brent, you have a formula you've developed over the years, and you call it the 3 truths of a cold call. But so what are those 3 truths of the cold call?
Yeah, if it's truly a cold call, right? We gotta understand. Sometimes in the world of sales or relationship building, we use terminology. We don't even know what the definition of the terminology is, but we use it all the time. All right. So if it's truly a cold call, there's at least 3 truths, because a cold call means I've never talked to you before. I don't know that I should be talking to you right now. And I'm not convinced quite yet or know for sure whether or not what we do over here at fill in the blank company has any value to you. So if it's truly a cold call, it's truly a cold call, right? So when I'm not saying that we should aspire to make 1,000 cold calls a week. I'm just saying, if you have to make a cold call, why don't we learn how to start with the truth? Right? Because the reality of it is, if you make a cold call in today's world, I guarantee the person on the other end of the phone can tell right away whether you're authentic or not. Because they're highly trained in picking up what Nick said. It's a trust cycle movement, right? So, and they're highly trained on being able to read authenticity very quickly. So when I make a cold call and say, hi, how are you today? They automatically know I don't care and I'm trying to sell something. So why don't I make the cold call based as close to the truth as possible? I've never called you before. We've never talked. I don't even know I should be now, because I know I'm an interruption. And I don't even know if what we do over here at Long on Life would have any value to you. Can I ask you one question before you hang up? 3 truths of a cold call, less than 10 seconds. They're either going to hang on there or they're not. You know what's really interesting about human psychology is, if I start with the truth and ask a question, they don't hang up.
Well, starting with the truth is the quickest way to gain trust.
Correct.
And so, Nick, you've actually been incorporating this type of approach into a lot of the work that you do. How does it change the nature of the conversation and when you get started?
Well, there's a couple things. Just having that mindset going into the call is critically important when you think about being authentic, right? So adopting those truths and believing in those truths is step number 1, right? This isn't just a tactic or a script to use on a call. It's a core belief that you've got to internalize and then integrate into your process. So how you say those 3 truths is less important than believing those truths and acting on them authentically, right? We could have a whole debate on if you should say "How are you" or not, right?
Yeah,
I totally hear your point, Brent, because I like something called kind of the assumptive formality, where it's normal to say "How are you," but you say it in a way that's like, I'm doing this as an assumptive formality that you're going to say, I'm good. Why are you calling?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, hey, this is Nick. How are you? Good. We don't know each other. We haven't spoken before. I know I'm interrupting you, and I'm not sure that the reason I'm calling is important to you right now. Before you hang up, can I share why I'm calling? Can I ask you a question? Whatever. So just having that mindset is tremendous, because I think it ties into another really important cold calling mindset, which is the point of making the call. And this could be debated, but a philosophy that I subscribe to is it's not to set a meeting. Like that's not the outcome that you're like, that shouldn't be the target for someone making calls. Like that will happen, especially these are cold calls where you haven't spoken to them before. Those truths matter, because if that's true, then why are you calling to say, I want to set a meeting with you? Because I think first and foremost, it's like, hey, is this relevant? Do you have a problem that needs to be solved now? And is it something that I could help you solve? Then you're asked that ultimate question that we led with eventually, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to be made well? And if that's true, then yeah, let's set up some time to talk about it. But I think, what is it? 3% of your market's buying, or 10%, or whatever the number is. So it's like, why are you forcing meetings with people to like meet a metric? Because to me, it's more important about expressing those truths, figuring out when is a good time to talk. Is this something that makes sense for the both of you to talk about? And it's probably not next Tuesday at 10 o'clock. It might be like 6 months down the road. And now you're making a warm call. And now your truth's different. It's not, we haven't spoken before. It's, we have talked before. You said this might be something that would be important to you to talk about at this point in time. And I just read this article about your company that I thought maybe now is a better time. Like, that's a mindset that just, it takes the pressure off of the call, right? Because if your mindset is, I need to set an appointment so I can hit my SDR metric numbers, blah, 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 then you're going to sound like that's your intent, and it's not going to go well.
Yeah.
That's just my thought.
No, I love
Gold
it.
star, man. Gold star. I love everything about that.
Well, and here let's keep diving on that. And Brent, one of the big things you coach on is that intent, is that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the mindset in the market right now. We're going into a market that has, in any market, if you're in sales, it's generally a much lower trust society that we're operating in now that it's ever been. A much more kind of get to the point, immediate satisfaction. I just did another podcast on limiting beliefs. And that mindset that we go into the idea of prospecting with makes all the difference in eliminating those limiting beliefs in there. So how do you start to coach people into that mindset when we're getting ready for prospecting, when we're getting ready to go out and share essentially of ourselves in the marketplace? It's not an easy thing to do, but it should be exciting.
Yeah, no, I think there are two beliefs, or two factors that come into the belief system of an individual that causes them to hold back on extending their services in the marketplace with humility and confidence. Those are the two factors, right? First of all, fear, right? Well, I'm going to screw this cold call up. I can't make a phone call. I don't know what to say. I'm going to screw it up. Something bad's going to happen. And then the relationship is over before it started, and. Now, all of that happens in the brain before it ever happens in a conversation. So a limiting belief is, I'm considering worst case scenario before I ever pick up the phone, which is why I'm not willing to pick up the phone. I literally had a conversation yesterday with a client of mine who was born in 1991, who did not think to put the phone number on a contact us form because she was scared of making the phone call that would result from them filling out the form, because she grew up in an environment where we don't make phone calls. We don't actually talk to people voice to voice. And I'm not going to know what to say, and I'm not going to get it right, but at least I can hide behind email and texting. And I said, how can you text if you don't have a phone number? Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Right? So if you got a phone number, why do we use it to make a phone call? So fear is a big factor. But also, oftentimes in the coaching of this, fear is tied into the fact that the individual does not know themselves well enough to know the solution behind the product they're even calling about. So my daughter, for example, calls me from New York a couple years back and says, Dad, I need to buy a drill. And I say, because I'm a dad, I say, sweetheart, why do you need a drill? And she says, duh, Dad, I want to put some holes in my wall. It's not about the drill, Dad. It's about the holes in the wall. I fell for it, right? Because I was focused on the drill. She's focused on what can the drill do for me? I need a solution, and I can't get holes in my wall to hang my pictures on, right? So she's a daughter and she gets it. She understands. I need to know myself well enough to know what is the true solution that I'm offering to somebody in a particular condition, or am I just trying to sell them to an appointment? The worst thing I can put on a calendar of myself or a salesperson's calendar is an appointment with somebody who will never have that problem that I get paid to solve. Now I'm just wasting people's time.
So how do you get Nick, I'll send this to you. How do you get yourself in a mindset of problem identification and relationship building on these initial calls? Because it's, again, you're crushing down barriers in the first 7 seconds, right? In terms of in trying to enhance trust. But how do you go from that, that stage to actually problem discovery?
Yeah, I think, if you think about the 3 truths and then how Brent wrapped that up, which is, hey, here are the 3 truths. We haven't spoken before. I'm not sure now's a good time, and I'm not sure there's ever a good time if I don't know if this is relevant. Which you got to be a little skeptical of, because you do want to be calling people that you would hope it's relevant for. Mm-hmm. Hey, it's relevant 100%. For other people. I don't know if it's relevant for you at the moment. I don't know if this is a priority for you right now. Mm-hmm. I've kind of leaned into that language a little more. Mm-hmm. Then it's before you hang up, or before hanging up, can I ask you a question? That question is the key to what you just asked, Paul.
100%.
So that takes, they'll say, sure. And 90% of the time, unless they're busy. But I think that question is really important, and that's, work that Brent helps teams with, right? Really mm-hmm. understanding mm-hmm. what is it that we do at my company? Like, what are the problems that we solve? There's a lot of work that goes into that. Mm-hmm. But through coaching and training and just working on your script and thinking about that, you should have a really relevant question right there. Great. Thanks for the opportunity to ask. So I'm talking with other operators that have this problem. How are you seeing that right now? Right? It's just natural kind of conversation. But I think you should be prepared to ask a pretty good question that ties into the value that you provide as a company, or the services or tools that you offer.
So good. Well, and Paul, if I can jump in there real quick, Paul, I don't mean to jump in, but I can't help but not jump in because Nick's really good at this. I'm just saying. So the idea is Nick knows what solutions he brings to the marketplace. So he doesn't have any fear of bringing those up in a conversation, but he does it in the form of a question. So for me, let's pretending I was making a cold call to a business owner, and here's the 3 truths of a cold call. You mind if before you hang up, you mind if I ask you a question? And the business owner says, sure, go ahead. And I says, hey, before I ask you a question, would you be willing to share with me how many salespeople you got? And the business owner, he or she says, yeah, I got 7 salespeople. And I say, which one of them is keeping you up at night? Because that's the question I really wanted to ask. Which one of their 7 is making you pull out your hair? Which one of the, see, I know because of who I'm calling the type of problems they have. And the person is going to say either none. Oh, good. You've got it all solved and you're good. So you don't need, so this call may not be that relevant. Or he or she is going to say, well, how did you know? Well, because I know that if you got 7 salespeople, one of them is driving you nuts right now. And so that's the one I want to ask about. What are you doing to try to help that? Blah, 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 blah. The thing that I teach and I coach, and Nick does a great job of this as it relates to the 3 truths of a cold call. If you're the servant, don't be the one to give up on the call. Just keep asking questions until they tell you to stop asking questions. But you got to know the first question to ask. That's what turns the 3 truths of a cold call into power, is knowing the first question to ask.
Well, I'm going to go. That's exactly where I was going to go to next, because it's and you dove into the idea of leadership and service directly in this call, because the best thing we could possibly doing is be asking those questions. So this is not, you don't advocate a massive script approach. You advocate for understanding and grabbing the attention, telling the truth, grabbing some attention, asking the first question, and then seeing where it leads and diving into question 3, 4, and 5, but just being confident enough that and present enough that you can ask questions 3, 4, and 5. Is that what I'm taking from this?
Yeah, 100%. Because again, if they're really good at spotting authenticity, and you're using a script, they already know you're not listening. Mm-hmm. So you're just thinking about the next, and the next. But if you can pause to hear their answer, and then your next question is based on what they said and how they answered, and you're able to go a little deeper, I will guarantee that if you hang in there long enough, because they can see your authenticity, they will walk you down to where the level of discomfort resides, where they think you might be able to help them somehow.
So you're saying we can actually have a conversation?
Yeah, I'm
Nick,
saying,
is that real?
Yeah, well, I think, well, for me, there's something that's important too. Is,
yeah,
like you said, don't be the one to give up on the call. And I did say the purpose is not to set a meeting, or that shouldn't be the outcome that is the most, like, that shouldn't be your what your goals are based on and stuff like that. There's a metric there that is important to measure 100%. And yeah, you should be calling with the hope to set an appointment if it makes sense. So I don't think that you need to be ready to do a 30-minute discovery call on the fly if you have someone that's willing to. I think you just need to get to a point where it's like, hey, it sounds like that is a problem for you right now, or it sounds like that's something that you're thinking about. Would you, I think asking for the time to like really go deep on the discovery makes a ton of sense. It's like, am I hearing that is something that you're concerned about? Is that something that would you want to talk about fixing that? Yeah. Okay. Well, then let's set up time to go into it more. Because again, the truth is, you don't know if now's a good, like, don't expect to do 30 minutes of deep discovery, and ask for the time if it makes sense.
100%.
I think you nailed it there at the end. And what I've been trying to get to is you hear a lot right now. I get cold calls all the time, and I get, and I think we've heard this for a long time, where people just come at you with the end in mind for that call already set, right? So the end in mind is not to serve the customer with the best next step for them. The end in mind is to get that meeting come hell or high water, and because there's a number. But the way that I always have really approached that is, I just, let's do it what makes sense, right? But you got to be good enough at that point. You got to be good enough to say, yeah, I can actually help you. It makes a ton of sense to set up some time, or, it's not the time right now, and be willing to say it's not the time right now. I'd love to reach out in 3 months, or, hey, I got a webinar coming up that would be awesome for you. I think would tie in. I do a lot of content on this. Would love to get you connected with it. I mean, there's so many next best steps that you can come into, but I think you both have hit on the point that if you don't go into a cold call with that mentality that it's okay, this is to serve them and to bring serve them by bringing my knowledge to the market, you're missing an opportunity, because there's so many ways you can serve.
Yeah.
100%. There's 8.2 billion people in the world right now. I probably ought to figure out the ones that I can serve and the ones that I can't fairly quickly.
That's the thing. And putting them, like, categorizing them after the call, because if there's some basic qualifying criteria that you should aim to learn on that call. I think one thing we skip that's important is go through the truths. Hey, can I ask you a question? Yeah, go for it. First, let me confirm. This is the Brent Long that owns Long on Life, right? Yes, because there's a lot of other Brent Longs. There's only one,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a lot maybe that share a name, right? But so confirm that, and then you're going to call them again if they fit some basic criteria that meets the people that you want to work with, right? Like, what kind of fish are you trying to capture?
Mm-hmm.
It's important to know. So I love your question of, well, let me ask you this: how many salespeople do you have? Because if it's one, maybe Brent doesn't want to call them again, or
I might not want to call them back.
you know what I mean. So, but if you figure out that basic criteria, and then it's just about timing, and if they have the problem, are they a no-never buyer that someone you just scratch off your list, and it's like we're never going to work with that person, or is it, hey, they're aware of the problem, it's something that they're actively thinking about, and they're going to look at next quarter? Is it something that they look at in the third quarter? So you need to just put them into these segments after you, like, to me, that's more important than setting the meeting, is building up a big bank of people that I have talked. I want to change those truths of the cold call. I want to change them to be like, hey, we have spoken before. I know this is super relevant for you. And now it's just a timing issue. And like building that bucket is the outcome that I think about when I make these calls. So rambling a bit, but those are some thoughts. It's more important.
And for the Nicks of the world, the reality of what Nick is doing there is he is picking up the next conversation where he left off on the cold call. There's no division in those conversations, because if you know. And by the way, for those listening, Membrain is a really, really good tool for doing this, right? So because you can categorize all that information, right, and you can understand the progress you made in that conversation, and that sounds like something that we'd probably want to talk about in 3 months. Is that okay? We don't even have to schedule it. I'll call you back. But when you call back, don't start from scratch. Start from where you left off on the cold call.
Yeah.
Too many people don't make that call because they're afraid of getting stuck, and they're being metriced to death with, I got to get a meeting scheduled. No, you actually have to find out if this is somebody that you can serve now or at any point in the future.
Yeah, your meeting set rate is going to be double, maybe triple, when you're calling people that you have spoken with before. That something like the follow-ups, the circle backs, whatever you want to call them, like that's where you can now think, okay, these are people. Oh man, great. I sit down, I'm looking at my call list in Membrain for the day, and I've got 20 calls to people that I know pick up the phone. I have their phone number, and I know the best way to reach them, and I know these are the things that are important to them. And now I'm trying to set an appointment. If you have 20 of those, you'll probably set 5 meetings, right?
Dude, so when I first started, it was my second gig, and I was an SDR for a company called Endforce, and I could never figure out why we would do things like we had the board we'd come up and write on, and the number of meetings we set. It's actually a really great culture. Love the people, and we were a startup. And I could never figure out why I was getting my ass kicked on like challenge weeks. We would do challenge weeks or challenge days where they'd say, hey, this is, meeting set. So the number of meetings set, you win a dinner out at a steakhouse or something like that. And I was always getting smoked. I was always really consistent in the numbers that I set. But when it went to that level of that, this is the week we're going to get all these meetings set, I always lost. And I asked one of my buddies, like, that won most of the time, I was like, how do you do this? He's like, well, I'm not sandbagging or anything, but these are all third or fourth calls. Like they're all third or fourth calls. And he knew exactly. And so he had a kind of game, but his meeting set rate during those weeks went sky high. Like it was amazing because he knew the people. He had already had relationships. The dude laughed more on cold calls and calls in general than anybody I'd ever met. Just he had fun. He enjoyed it. He asked great questions. But so Nick, what you're talking about, John taught me back in 2004, right? Or 2003, which was like, how do you categorize those and effectively, instead of pushing for that meeting and thinking that's the end all be all, how do you serve appropriately and then categorize the when, how, and where you can serve them the next time? And it changed my game in terms of prospecting overall. Like absolutely. But I got smoked early on in that.
Let me give, if we can, Paul, let me give you an example yesterday. Now, this is not a phone call, but it's a cold call, but not on the phone. I was having lunch yesterday by myself, eavesdropping on a conversation behind me at a restaurant. Literally, I'm just being honest. I was eavesdropping on this conversation behind me because there's a business owner and one of his project managers sitting there talking about this construction project that they got to put a bid together on. So when I'm done with my lunch, I get up and I say, hey, I've been eavesdropping on this conversation. And they just laughed. But that was also the truth. And I said, have you ever heard of? And then I gave him the name of one of my clients in the construction world. Just long story short, they gave me both of their business cards. I carried their business card to a coaching session at my client's office. It made an introduction. Now the owner of that company that I interrupted the conversation of wants to sit down for coffee because he liked how I approached him in the marketplace and said, none of my people can do that. It was his words.
That's awesome.
His words. That was really refreshing.
That's fantastic, Brent. That's fantastic. And I won't even call you a creeper.
Good. Okay. That's a whole nother podcast, right? That's a whole nother podcast.
No, I think it's awesome. You have the presence and the courage to just make it happen and start a relationship.
I could hear the frustration and the concern and the worry in their conversation. If I can help with that, why would I not offer? Why would I not make a cold call in a restaurant by interrupting their conversation gently, nicely? But I also just introduced them to a company that could hire them a ton, perhaps, for their subtrades.
That's awesome stuff. That is awesome stuff. Well, hey, we could probably go on all day, but we're going to start wrapping up, and I want to start wrapping up by going back to the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about how prospecting has changed and how we believe relationships are still at the beginning of it. Like have to be. It's just the medium that's changed. Mm-hmm. You're working with a lot of companies. What are some of the companies that you're doing overall in prospecting doing really, really well?
I will tell you that the organizations that I'm working with who are doing extremely well in prospecting are trying to get the cycle to voice as quickly as possible. Voice to voice as quickly as possible. And if there are too many emails or text messaging going back and forth during the prospecting phase, I'm encouraging my clients to interrupt the voicemail or the email or the text with the phone call. And it's working because people still respond to voice. They can hear your voice. You're talking to their voice, and those connections are happening, and it's going extremely well. As quickly as we can, let's get the voice-to-voice interaction.
And I have to say human to human, too, which is super weird that we have to say that right now.
You're exactly right.
All right, we'll get to that voice-to-voice. Nick, any final thoughts for the episode today?
Get out there and pick up the phone, people. I'll tell you this, too. Like I said, it is harder. I wanted to ask Brent a question.
Yeah.
So now on your iPhone and on any phone, you can get an app that like screens every call. So you know, when I call people on their mobile, oftentimes I hear Siri asking me, "Hey, what's your name and why are you calling?" I have that set up on my phone. I don't think I've ever I get a lot of unknown calls, and I never have it. Like no one ever answers that. Like they just hang up when they hear that. So I respond to it every time. And I was doing a trip down to Cincinnati, so I was calling prospects in that area, and it said, "What's the reason for your call?" And I said, "This is Nick Massaro regarding our meeting at your office this week." And it wasn't. I wasn't trying to be insincere with that. You know what I mean? Because let me just rephrase. I wasn't meeting with this person. This was a prospect that I wanted to meet with at their office. But I said that, they picked up, and we had a 10-minute conversation and ended up meeting. But why aren't people responding to that AI screening? Why do they just avoid that? And how would you respond to it if it's asks you, "Hey, what's your name and why are you calling?"
Yeah, great question. I will tell you, as a sales coach, been doing this 30 some years, I would say and you know this about me because I write it up when I'm done having the conversation. I take as many telemarketing cold related phone calls as I possibly can because I'm studying the industry and I'm studying how people do it, because I want to be able to help take this call sucked so bad. It was so terrible that I'm going to write something up about it. And then I'm going to bring it to my clients and I'm going to say, please do not ever do that. That's so I'm using. So it's amazing. I don't understand why people do not have the courage nor the belief in what they're bringing to the marketplace to be able to think quickly about, this is Brent Long, and I'm calling to make sure that you're not bleeding out of the back of your head, lacking sales revenue, blah, 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 blah.
I knew you'd have a good response.
Right? Because if you just happen to be bleeding out of the back of the head, I am not in the life-saving business, but I can probably stop the leak in your sales team. So should I call you back or should I not call you back? And I won't know and you won't know, but I'm going to call you again tomorrow between 2 and 3. And I'm going to ask the same question just to make sure that everything in your organization is okay. Like I'm telling you, they are not forgetting that call. I'm just going to let you know, they're not going to forget the call. I have a client. I'm going to see him Saturday. My first ever client in this business did this repeatedly when he was first starting out. I coached him all the time. He got a job interview off of explaining the 3 truths to a cold call. The guy hired him. He said, there's nobody on my sales team that can do that. Where did you learn that? He said, I learned it from Brent Long. And what you mean you invested in a sales coach? Oh, I want you on my team already. The guy got a job interview from calling a president owner of a company and talking to him about the 3 truths of a cold call.
I love that. That's so good. Well, gentlemen, you are the masters of this domain. I really appreciate you diving in. And I will, one last time, just for everybody there, make sure you're, and I'm not getting paid commission. Brent, we'll just swap commissions because you mentioned Membrain. But greatest sales question ever asked. Tremendous stories in there, written from the heart, written like Brent speaks, and it's absolutely wonderful in terms of the content and how you're making an impact on the sales. So really appreciate this work and highly recommend it. And then Nick, man, thanks for being on. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
This is right up your alley and something that you always crush. So it's just absolutely awesome. Any last thoughts?
I just want to be more like you guys when I grow up. That's all.
All right. Well, I'll send you some tips.
Okay.
Send you
thank
some
you.
tips.
Tips and tricks.
All right.
Yeah.
Tips and tricks. How to be like Nick. I wouldn't recommend me, but how to be like Nick.
How to be like Nick. Yeah.
All right. Hey, everybody. Keep shining bright. Have an absolute amazing day. Thank you so much for listening to the Art and Science of Complex Sales. Make sure you're doing all the liking, the subscribing, the clicking, and all of the things that get this content out there. And for Brent, Nick, and myself, thank you for being here. Have an absolutely amazing day.
Bye.
Take care.